it was such an incredible experience, and I knew what was happening. There was no fuzziness or confusion, and man, I was just being thrown out of that body. It was just so great.
Hi, Rosemary. Thanks for joining me today. I heard you had a near-death experience. You mind sharing it with us, please?
That would be delightful. I did have a near-death experience, and it was very profound. To say it changed my life would be an understatement. My life had been pretty sweet, married a man whom I considered to be the man of my dreams. And then one day he came home for lunch and ended his life. For 2 years, I was a lost soul. I even went through a period of homelessness. So, at 29 months after his death, I was diagnosed with cancer, stage 2. And I was beside myself because prior to this, I had prayed 3 prayers every night after his death. I had asked God either heal me or let me die. 2, no life review. I had recurring nightmares after his death as to how it happened, how the whole thing unfolded. I had seen this once. I didn't want to see myself going through this again. And the third was no more hard decisions. I suffered severe decision fatigue. I was tired of being responsible for so many decisions. And after somebody ends their life, there's a lot of legal messes that have to be tidied up. So at 29 months, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I thought, God, I asked you, heal me or let me go. And I meant quickly, not through some prolonged disease process. I just couldn't believe it. I thought, haven't I been tortured long enough? Can we have this end now? So there were all kinds of expectations, and I had to have a surgery related to this diagnosis. Well, during the surgery, somebody made some boo-boos, and I ended up being sent home after the surgery, even though I was bleeding profusely. And it was a biopsy of my, let's just call it a gynecological biopsy. And I was sent home despite the fact that I was bleeding. And then after I got home, I realized I'm bleeding to death. And so I remember standing in the shower, because, when you're bleeding to death, you don't want to mess up your white carpet. Housekeeping is paramount. But I remember standing in the shower and thinking, I thought about 1 Corinthians 10:13, which said, God will show you a way out. And I thought, this is my way out. I had been asking, heal me or let me go. Apparently the answer is I'm being allowed to go. So I stood in that shower and I thought, maybe this is God's mercy. So I'm standing in the shower, bleeding to death, and I realize I'm starting to get a little woozy and weird in the head, and I realize I'm time for a decision. And I thought, this is God's mercy. This will be over soon. And then I thought, in these last 29 months, so many people have tried so hard to save me. Perhaps it's not fair to them to just die now. So I did step out of the shower. I had a couple friends in my living room, and I said, call 911, I'm bleeding to death. And they did. Ambulance came, took me to a little ER. At the ER, they made some more mistakes. And in fact, they finished me off, actually. They gave me morphine, which it turns out when you're bleeding to death is a real bad idea. It depressed my heartbeat even more, and blood pressure as well. My friend who was witnessing this, he said he looked up at my blood pressure cuff at one point and said 32/25, which for all purposes is gone. You're dead. And he said, but my eyes popped open. This is so cool. Have you ever heard of the term terminal lucidity? You ever heard of that?
Yep.
Yeah. At the end of life, we get this burst of energy, and we do things that would seem impossible. So my blood pressure is just going bop, 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 bop. And this witness, my friend sitting beside me, said my eyes popped open. He said, you tried to sit up on the gurney, which is remarkable because, I'm pretty close to dead. And he said, you reached up to heaven. You reached straight up and you talked to somebody only you could see, almost like a child reaching for their father to pick them up.
Oh.
And he said, you said a few words and then you flopped back down on the gurney. And he said, and then your blood pressure went to error, which meant it was lower than 32/25. I just remember feeling pretty woozy on that gurney. And then after they gave me that shot, I just remember feeling like I was going to sleep. Well, when I woke up, I felt like I'd been catapulted out of my body. I mean, that's what awakened me, was this feeling of being jarred awake. I've often described it as like toast popping out of a toaster. I mean, it was very dramatic, being popped out of my body. And I heard a ping or a noise. It was like a plop as I separated from my body. And it was such an incredible experience because throughout my life, I've read all these books about NDEs. And I had just been fascinated by it, as so many people are. And now I was having one, and I knew what was happening. There was no fuzziness or confusion. And man, I was just being thrown out of that body. It was just so great. And the first words out of my mouth in this new experience were, "My heart has stopped." And I thought, how do I know that? I thought, I don't know that, but I know that's right. And I was like, wow. And then I thought, I'm dying. And then being the long-term editor and writer, I thought, actually, you're not dying, you're dead. Because when you're going on to your reward, correcting your tense really is the most important thing. And I thought, that's funny. And I laughed. I laughed because I cracked myself up. And I thought, I heard myself giggle. And I sounded just like I've always sounded. And having been somebody who lived alone for a time, and plus being a writer and plus being a half bubble off plum, I have a unique habit of talking to myself a lot. And that's what I was doing. And people say, oh, it was telepathic. You were communicating with yourself. Oh, well, this wasn't in my head. I was speaking. I was speaking perhaps even more realistically, tangibly than I am right now. I thought, wow, every single thing I am, down to my funny little giggle, has made this transition. My macabre sense of humor, my goofiness. And I thought, I don't think I did not have breath sounds. I said, I don't think I have vocal cords or lungs or all the traditional accoutrements of, physical being. I thought, and yet I'm still producing sound. I'm still hearing sound. And I cannot begin to tell you how immensely comforting it was that every single thing I really am had made this transition. And I remember thinking, what did I leave on that gurney? And I thought, the guilt, the self-recrimination, the anxiety, the sadness, the pain, the regret, every negative emotion you can imagine is what I had left behind. And in this new experience, I was shed of all that. And I remember thinking, as a over-ruminating, neurotic type writer, I'd always wondered what I'd look like if I didn't have those anxieties and fears and all that stuff. And I thought, I like this. I'm separated from that. And I like this feeling that I'm not that person. I'm not my fears, my worries, my woes. I'm this person. And boy, I tell you, one of the predominant feelings I had, there were so many, but one, this experience of being catapulted out of my body and being like, whoa, it was very much, I know other people have said this, it's like being awakened from a very intense dream. And I had been alive for 59 years at this point, and it felt very much like I had just been shaken awake. And somebody said, hey, that was a pretty intense dream you had. Went on for a while. And yet the fact is those 59 years felt like literally the blink of an eye. It was like, whoa, none of that was that big a deal. I got into all this drama of, oh, he did this thing and my friends left me and all this bad. It was like, wasn't that big a deal. And as I was in this experience, floating further and further away from wherever I had been, I felt the presence of spiritual beings with me, and I was in blackness. Several people have said, did you see your body? I did not. I've heard people describe this blackness as velvety soft, and it was, but this blackness in which I was ensconced was actively comforting me. And people talk a lot about feeling the love. The predominant thought I had was the peace. The peace. It was like peace was infused into every iota of who I am. Every bit of who I am was infused with this perfect peace. And I even thought about the Bible verse, the peace of God that passeth all understanding. And I thought, this is that peace. I could never describe to somebody what this peace is like, because it passes what we can understand. And then I thought, it's so cool that I have all my memories. I remember the firemen who came to my house to put me on a gurney and take me to the hospital. And it wasn't a life review, but it was just all the memories of all the love that had been shown to me were predominant. And that was so comforting that there wasn't a life review. There was no thing of some spiritual being standing with me as I watched my life unfold on a screen. It was none of that. It was just, again, what went with me was the love, the kindness, the goodness, the people. I remember talking to a female friend, and people who have survived the death of a loved one, as I had, we are 21st century lepers. Nobody knows what to do with us. So people stay away from us because it's very frightening to be around somebody who's been through that much trauma and upset. But this one friend, well, there were many friends, but one of them in particular, I told her name was Pat. And I said, Pat, I am ashamed of what I did to survive because I went through a phase of drinking too much and becoming addicted to prescription medication and some other behaviors that were not really aligned with who I am. And she said, Rosemary, I don't care what you had to do to survive. You survived, and that's in the past. You got through it, and you stayed alive. She said, that's all that matters. And I remember just how much love like that had been showered on me as I went further and further away from my body. And if somebody said you have to sum this whole thing up in just 3 words, it would be very clear. These spiritual beings that were with me as I floated away in this blackness, they were so glad to see me, It was like welcoming somebody who's been away on a long voyage. And the 3 words would be, welcome home, dearie. And my whole life I have been an oddball on so many levels, I have just never fit into this world very neatly. And I had felt like such an outsider to life, And in this experience, I was with these beings, people, whatever you want to call them, that were so proud of me, so happy to see me back. I just can't begin to describe how I finally felt like, oh my gosh, there's an old poem, I can't remember the details, but the humans drew a circle and kept me out, but then God drew a circle and took me in. And that's what it felt like. I'd finally found my circle where people surrounded me and said, hey, here you are. Look at you. We're so glad you're home. We're so glad you're back. It all worked out, didn't it? And I had not one thought of returning to this earthly experience. I was so grateful. Throughout my life, I've kept a daily list of 5 things for which I'm grateful. Every morning I write out, I'm grateful that, my child had a quick healing. I'm grateful the repairman showed up to fix my appliance. I'm grateful for this. And in this experience, as I was floating further and further away, I thought, I'm so grateful it's over. I'm so grateful God heard my prayers. I asked God to heal me or let me go, and I got both. I got healed, and I got to leave. And it really felt like I'd been granted early release for good behavior. It really, really did. I can't emphasize that enough. People laugh at that, but I mean it from the depths of my soul. And it just went on. And I know we only have a short amount of time. One of the things that happened very early on was I felt the presence of a massive spiritual being to my left, much taller than me, and slightly behind me. And even though I'm still floating, I turn my head to the left and look up, and pretty cognizant of the fact that I am turning my head to the left to look over my left shoulder. And I'm thinking, whatever thing we had over there, we take some, and maybe this was just a transition, but it obviously had a human-esque form of some kind. But as I looked up and I said, and who are you? Because I couldn't see anything. I'm in this perfect blackness. But the answer, I know people talk about this, but it's true. Even before I could finish the question, the answer was immediate, and it wasn't just words, but it came with an infusion of understanding. But the answer was, you, Rosemary, you are the image and likeness. I'm the original. I was like, whoa, that's 1 Genesis 25 and 26, a Bible verse I've struggled my whole life to understand. We're made in the image and likeness of God. I was like, oh, there's an original, and I'm the image and likeness. I was like, cool. It was just so great. It's just so great. But I'd never thought all my life I'd read Bible commentaries and exegeses and everything I could think of to understand. And now I had it, I just felt so understood. After having been a weirdo my whole life, and that's a harsh term, but I felt understood as I am. And one of the things that impressed me deeply was that, of course, we are loved by God, but we're also really liked. I had a not so nice dad my dad had 3 sons and me, and he had pictures of his 3 sons on his desk at work. And when I was about 14 or 15, I said, hey, I guess I was 13 or 14, but I said, how do I have to get a picture what do I have to do for you to have a picture of me on your desk? And he said, oh, you have to earn it. It's not granted. You have to earn a spot on my desk, which, meant in his heart too, So I thought that's what God was. We have to earn the love of everybody and everything, except our mom. Moms love us. But I thought that's what God was. And I have gotten so much criticism. My book is out. The number one thing I criticize for brutally, is that sometimes I use a feminine pronoun to refer to God as she. And people beat me up over that. I'm like, well, if a father's love seems like an oxymoron to you, I think it's okay to use a motherly appellation for God. And that's what got me, was that God not only loves us, but really likes us. And the best part was that God likes us as is. God doesn't say, when you do something noteworthy, when you fulfill your purpose, when you stop being stupid or foolish or sleeping too late or, playing on the computer, when you stop and start doing the right thing, you'll be loved. And the message was, you are so loved. You are so appreciated. Gosh, we like you. And there are still days when I have to just sit and go back to that memory of being surrounded by these spiritual beings who are just like, she's back. She's home. There's an old African American spiritual, this earth is not my home. I'm just a passing through. And I think that's right. I know that's right. And you hear these people, I talk to people just so in love with life. Oh, I hope I live to be 120. I hope yeah. No, I am serving my time. I am doing my best to enjoy the beauty of this world. But man, when it's time to be gone, I'll be, see you later, sucker. I will be so glad. So anyway, so I was still drifting further and further away from my body, thinking, hey, it's over. I am out of here. And I also remember thinking I was supposed to start chemotherapy and radiation treatment the next week. And I thought, that has ceased to be a problem. That is no longer a concern. And I had thought about, the financial obligations in my immediate future. And I was like, not my problem anymore. I am done. Oh man, it's amazing the intensity of the memories that I had. And that was also comforting too. I remembered everything from this experience. It really felt like I used to do a lot of home improvements. It really felt like my whole life I'd been living out of a 60 amp breaker box. And now somebody's putting 100,000 amps through it, and I was like, whoa, wow, everything is so much bigger than I thought. But this experience went on and on and on. I could, talk for hours, but then at some point, I don't remember the transition, but at some point I was in a white room and I was no longer floating, but I was standing on something approximating 2 legs. And I was like, whoa, well, I was just floating a minute ago, and now I'm in this white room. I don't remember how this happened. I still don't. Often at times, when I go to sleep at night, I say a little prayer that, how did I get from that floating to this white room? But I don't have any answers yet. So I'm in this white room now, and the white room is beautiful. And it's white, luminescent, bright white. And there are no light fixtures. And there's this very heavy mist falling. And I saw a door in front of me. And having been a fan of the NDEs, I knew exactly what that door meant. And I was like, okay, well, the door's like 15 to 20 feet in front of me. And I remember thinking, I don't know if I have legs or feet or what's going on. I wish I'd looked. Oh, I wish I'd looked. I've heard people say that too. It's just not in your mind. Oh, let me see what I have down there. But I remember thinking, if I can perambulate with intention toward that door, I know I'll get there. So I thought, I want to be at that door. I want to be through the door. I knew what the door was. I knew the door was, the thing that would get me out of this place, get me, make sure I didn't go back to there. I thought I need to get to that door as fast as possible. And I felt the beings were still with me, but I couldn't really see them, but I could hear them and I could sense them. And I pretty much was giving the message of everybody out of the way. We're doing the door, clear a path, gonna get there as fast as possible. And as I approached the door, and I felt like I was walking, I don't know the mechanism by which I moved, but this mist that was falling all around me, it was also swirling around me. It wasn't just gravity or something. It was swirling and dancing and very beautiful mist. And I asked one of the spiritual beings that was with me, I said, I feel like I should be able to focus on an individual droplet of this mist. And the angelic being with me said, your spiritual eyes have not acclimated to this yet. And if you're ever in a fog again, think about focusing on a droplet of vapor. But for some reason, I feel like I should be able to see it. But the spiritual being also said, what you're seeing are particles of light. And they likened it to a spiritual car wash. And it was explained to me that some people die with such a belief impressed upon them that that disease process is part of their identity, or mental illness is part of their spiritual innate identity or spiritual identity, that this has to be cleansed off of them before they proceed to heaven. And so it was explained to me that this was washing away the muck of the earth, all other people's opinions of me, my own false opinions of me, ideas about, again, disease processes of many names, and it was all being stripped away. And at some point in this experience, it was conveyed to me that if I agreed to go back, that I would be restored to wholeness. And the thing was, it wasn't that you'll be healed of that stage 2 cancer, but you will be restored to wholeness. And the word integrity is the same root word that we have for wholeness. Isn't that interesting? It's like our spiritual integrity is what we should all be seeking. So I got to that door and I put my right hand up to push through the door. And I was a little miffed it was shut. But then I paused and I asked the spiritual being that was with me, I said, is this the divine will for my life? That a medical mistake sends me to my reward? And all I could get through is this the divine? And the answer was immediate. And the answer was no. But I was told, whatever you decide, you go with all of God's mercy and blessings and grace and care and love. I was like, sweet, I'll take that deal. So again, I was ready to push on, and I was given an image of the nurse before I lost consciousness, before the 2 medical personnel left the room on that gurney in the ER. This very sweet, motherly nurse had held my hand. Because when you're losing blood, one of the effects of bleeding to death is anxiety. And they think the reason is, well, 1, you're seeing this stuff pour out of you, but 2, the brain is a big consumer of energy and oxygen. So when you lose sufficient blood, you can't reason. You can't say, oh, I'll probably be fine. So anxiety is a very common side effect of bleeding to death. And I was pretty anxious. But so anyway, this nurse held my hand and I said, am I going to die? And she said, oh, honey, we're not going to let you die. We have many solutions for this. And I was so comforted. And so I'm at this door in this white room, and I have this very strong vision. And vision's the wrong word. It was like I had been put in a hospital supply room to watch this nurse, and she didn't know I was there. But this nurse was leaning forward, head in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. And I'm witnessing this. I know she can't hear me, see me, experience me, but I'm witnessing this. And she says, through tears, she says and sobs, I promised that woman I wasn't going to let her die, and I've lost her. I was like, oh, man. I was like, way to get an empath, show her somebody else's pain. And I was like, oh, come on. And I thought, you know what? She's about my age. She's been through this. I have to leave. I cannot go back to that experience. I can't. And then I wasn't just shown this woman, but I felt the grief and regret and sadness she had literally in the center of my being. And I recognized that as the same grief and despair I had known since my husband's death 29 months earlier. I remember thinking, if I can spare one human being that much pain, I have to go back. But I put my right hand down by my side. I remember thinking, I do have to return. I have to spare her that. And so as soon as that right hand went down, I'm thinking, yeah, I was back in that body in a second, a millisecond. The thing was, there was no backwards whoosh. There was a whoop, nothing. I was just back on that gurney. And there's a lot more to the story, but the bottom line is I was dead for more than 10 minutes. And the thing is, when somebody dies from bleeding to death, because I interviewed several medical personnel for my book. When somebody dies from bleeding to death, you can't do CPR because that just pushes more blood out of the body. So I had an emergency room physician tell me, plug the leak, refill the tank, and restart the heart. That's what they do. So they figure out what's leaking. They patch it, fix it. They add fluids so that the heart has something to pump. and then they get the heart going again. So the point of the story is my brain had no blood supply, no oxygen for more than 10 minutes. And according to medical personnel, I should have been significantly compromised by this event. And the first doctor that appeared at my bedside and said, "You've had a heart attack." I said, "Not me. I eat my fruits and veggies and I ride my bike. I'm in great shape." He said, "Nope, nope, nope, Miss Thornton, you've had a heart attack." And apparently they do blood tests, and I had elevated enzymes, which show damage to the heart. And he said, "You've sustained some heart damage." And he said, "We're going to do some testing." I said, "You don't need to do the test. The angel said if I agreed to come back, I'd be fine, fine, fine." They did the test anyway. And all the tests showed absolutely no heart damage. I was in excellent health. And it took a while. And I had to find another oncologist because it turns out when you go to your oncologist and say, "Good news, we don't need to do that chemo or radiation because I was healed in heaven," they don't take it well. Actually, he wrote mentally ill on my chart. So I had to find another oncologist. Ultimately, many more biopsies were done. One surgery, but it took flesh from all kinds of places. She said, "There's not one cell of cancer anywhere on your body." And she said, "And not only is there no evidence of cancer," she said, "had it not been for all the original tests and all the original stuff they did," she said, "I wouldn't believe you ever had cancer. Your flesh is so pink and pretty and perfect." She said, "There's no evidence of any disease ever having been present." And yet and I know that, people say, "Well, you never had it then." The thing that sent me to the doctor was a lot of very, very disturbing symptoms. So I think there's a little doubt about that. Plus, it had been visible on initial exam, you know. So it was a big deal. And then but the bigger deal, that grief and despair I had over my husband's unfortunate end was gone. I forgave myself. And I had tried for 29 months to forgive myself and to let go of that last argument and to blame myself that if only I had not gotten upset with him, he'd still be here. That guilt was gone, the self-recrimination, the self-hatred, the wishing I was dead. And I realized all three of those prayers had been answered, I said, "Heal me or let me go." And I did get both. The second one was no life review. All I remembered was all the love that had been shown me. And the third was no more hard decisions. I was told, because that's kind of a big decision to decide if you go on to heaven or you come back to this experience. And I was told, whatever you decide, you'll be blessed. And I thought, wow, so all three of my prayers got answered in really beautiful ways. After I came back from this, I sold pretty much all of my worldly possessions. And I moved 1,000 miles to the Midwest. I had been living on the East Coast because I just want to watch corn grow. I really love watching plants grow. Have you ever thought about the majesty of how you put some itty-bitty seed in the dirt and you stomp it down, and then it produces this incredible plant? And I don't know, I can't get past the corollaries to my own life. I had just been stomped into the ground by life. And it's but life, sometimes that's what starts life, is when you get given up and say, well, that thing's never going to produce anything good. Look at her. So I like watching corn grow, and people laugh at that, but it's true. I like being in the Midwest. I live in the middle of a lot of cornfields. And I did sell most of my stuff. I didn't have that much stuff, but I realized when I was floating away from my body, I was the happiest I'd ever known in conscious memory. And I thought, you don't need stuff to be happy. And I had inherited many things from my beloved mama. She died many years ago. I couldn't let go of those things. But after this, I realized I have the lovely memories. I don't need the thing. And when I was floating away, I felt so much peace. So that enabled me to let go of all this material stuff. And it was great. And I started a new life in the Midwest and wrote a book. I said, I am not writing a book. People say, "Oh, you should write a book about this." I am not writing a book. I've written 9 books, and this was going to be number 10. I said, no, 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 double no, no, not writing. Who was it? Dorothy Parker said, "I hate writing. I love having written."
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm with her. Mainly, I hate writing. Anyway, I wrote a book because several people said it would be a blessing to others. So I was a reluctant writer.
You've said you saw some angels in heaven. You've seen them also when you came back. Can you please describe what they looked like?
Yes, that's one of my favorite stories. And thank you for reminding me. When the folks left my bedside in that hospital, angels appeared at my bedside on 3 sides, on the 2 sides and at the foot of the bed, and they sang me songs. And I would just look at them and I go, wow. And then they would sing, and their songs were glorifying God. And their songs were so beautiful. And they were, I would sob. I remember this so clearly. I sobbed as they sang to me because it was like too much beauty. It was just too much beautiful for one person to take in. And through sobs, I would say, don't stop. It's just so beautiful. But I talked to them and I said, I'm really good at architecture. I mean, that's my thing. My books are on architectural history. I said, I'm really good at images and houses and memorizing images. And I said, but I'm not going to be able to remember the melody or the lyrics. And I desperately want to. I want to remember this, and I want to never forget what you're singing. And the angels said, this is not for you to remember, the melody and lyrics. They said, this is for your healing. This is for your peace. This is for your joy. And they also said, this is a thank you for agreeing to come back, because we know that life on earth is hard. And I know I'll remember that. I don't even say I'll remember that to my dying day. I'll remember that for eternity. But as to what they looked like, it's so easy to say. They were very tall, like 6.5 feet plus, and they had a humanesque form, head, shoulders, torso. But they were draped in these gowns made of light with sparkles, like some of those beads you see that have like a bead and a couple inches of space and another bead and a couple inches of space. They were draped in these things, but as they sang, they became more sparkly and more light-filled. And the more they glorified God and sang about love, the brighter they got. And they just got brighter and brighter. And they were so happy to be singing about light and love and beauty, and their songs were just to the glory of God. It was incredible. So, and I wanted to know, and I wonder if we have that around us a lot, and we just need to open our eyes to see what's really going on in this earthly experience. Because I know we have angels with us all the time. Why can't they speak up? Why can't they always surround our bedside and sing to us? But I loved that they said, we know that human life on this earth is hard. And they said, we're here to thank you for coming back.
Wow. And then I heard you also describe it in another interview as the sparks coming off of a welding thing.
Yes, that's what I saw at church. Yeah, I saw that at a church. I went to a church service, and oh my goodness, it was first church service I went to after my experience, and I was sitting in the pews, and the organist came in. Actually, it was a pianist. She came in and she sat down. She prayed the prelude for the service, and it was a small piano. I might have been a baby grand, I don't remember, but as soon as she struck those chords, there was an explosion of light came out from under the piano, from the hammers and the strings. An explosion of light, and I mean explosion. And I was sitting in the pew, and I remember looking around like, anyone else seeing this? But this explosion of light, and it was all colors, it was yellows and greens and blues and pinks and reds and just so beautiful, and so much light came off, and it went straight up to the ceiling, and then it spread out over the ceiling, and then it dripped down on all of us. And that's when I saw the most relevant I can make it is to the sparks that come off when a welder is welding two metals together. Produces those yellowish sparks that they roll across the ground. You ever seen that? I mean, you think they would just extinguish immediately, but that's what it was like. So these sparks went way up in all these colors, and it came down on all the congregants' heads, and it came down on the pews beside them, and it came down on the floor, and we were just being rained in this beautiful heavenly light show of this light, and it sprang out of this piano. And the thing is, I have begged God, I have begged the angels, let me see it again, let me see it. And I have never seen that again. But I have never heard a musical instrument played without remembering it. Anytime I hear music, I think, I know what's really happening. We're being showered with light and love.
Love it. It's so descriptive and so beautiful. I love it. So how do people learn more about your experience or get in contact with you? Or do you want people to get in contact with you?
I do want people to get in contact with me. My website, temporarydeath.com. Emails come direct to me.
Hey, thank you for watching. If you want to know what video to watch next, I would suggest this one. This seems like a really good video for you to watch right now. Yeah, that seems like a good one. Oh, you could subscribe. You could do that too. Subscribe or watch this video. Up to you. Bye-bye.